Hello everyone, this is King and welcome back to my Let's Play on Tactics Ogre Reborn. This is going to be episode 3 in our Let's Play. In the previous episode we went over to the second battle and fought in the Almork Castle. And this third battle here will be our first time where we can actually fight by ourselves. So you'll have the most amount of action in this particular fight, so look forward to that. If you like my content or if you want to see more than this, please be sure to like and subscribe and follow me for more. And if you have any comments or concerns, please place them in the comments below. If you know anything that can be helpful or if you hear me say anything wrong, be sure to leave it in the comments below. I'm not an expert. Sometimes I'll say something wrong. You just go ahead and say, hey King, that's incorrect. Here's the right information. I would highly appreciate that. Just please do it in a professional and nice manner. Again, we don't know everything, or at least I don't claim to know everything. But without further ado, let's get started with the Let's Play. So as you have already seen, I have gone straight into my housekeeping phase. Now this is something you're supposed to be doing at the end, or this is something what I typically do at the end. But we didn't do this during the first episode, so we're going to be doing it now. For future episodes, this is typically something I'll do after each major, well, not after each major battle, after each battle. So what I did here is I went to the Warren report and just checked out all of the major topics, reports, and anything regarding people. Now the reason why I do this is to unlock any of the side quests that are hidden through the reading of these particular reports. Now aside from that, they do provide very detailed information on each character, so if you are confused on who's what, or if you want to know more about a person where they can be more fleshed out, be sure to read that because that's very informative, and again, it does flesh out the story a lot more than what the intro does. Now the intro is just a good foundation. If you want to add more to it or compound in your knowledge of it, you can definitely check that out. It's a great resource, but for the most part, I normally just blaze right through it, trying to unlock any of the hidden, hidden side perks here. So here we go in the Tynemouth Hill. That is our third battle here. Again, like I said, it's gonna be the one we do by ourselves. This is against the Magus Orba. Now, whenever it comes down to any of the side bosses or mini bosses, they do show up in the Warren report as well. So each time you slay a mini boss, they will have a new update in the Warren report, so be sure to check it after each battle to check your Warren report, and that's why I suggest doing so. Again, the only reason why we did it at the beginning of the video is because we didn't do it at the end of it in our last video, so I'm trying to make it a habit of doing exactly that. It's going to be one battle, housekeeping, Warren report, saving, and then training our troops up, and that's going to be how it cycles through. Here we have Canopus actually joining the fray in this particular battle. He is not in our party yet, but he is here assisting as a guest. And he is one of the best early game characters you will receive. He has great base stats, and he makes a very versatile character. As this particular character, he is a Vartan. I made the mistake of making him a archer later in the game. You'll definitely see me do that, but I don't know if I regret it or not. I have mixed feelings about it. I think there were better things to make him at the time, or I think it was better to leave him as a Vartan, maybe later on make him an archer. But again, I had good experiences slash bad experience. Like the cons is the low movement tile, and the pros is having the archer's skill. I believe it's called it's like guaranteed critical skill. That was good. The only downside was it cost like 40 MP. It's really hard to get 40 MP during in-game. You get like plus 15 per turn, and it just took forever for him to do big damage, and he couldn't really move as far as I wanted to. If you saw earlier that you saw some bickering with Vice and Canopus, that was, I would say, present in the PS1 version, but not in the same text or way, I guess, because I don't really remember him throwing a rock, and if he did, he didn't not throw it twice. I'm pretty sure if he ever threw a rock, it was only once. and it was just, I don't know, it's just like the text was different too. And I get that a lot, like for friends who play in the JP version, friends who played in the PS1 version, the SNES version, they all say the same thing. Like, they all say the same dialogue, but in a different way, to where you can actually get it interpreted differently. Like sometimes they will say it in such a way where some things are implied, where others are, it's a bit more, you know, ambiguous, I guess that's the right word for it. It's just like you can't really tell what they're saying. So it's just, again, like at one point, there was a point in time where people thought Kachuo had feelings for Denim, or like, even now you can question that, like, because she does display a really hard, heavy brother complex. and I mentioned that in the episode 1, because she always mentions, like, why don't you pay attention to me, why don't you care for me, etc., etc. But a lot of people really come out, they either are pro Kachuo or they are anti Kachuo 100%. For obvious reasons, depending on where you go along the line. Like, this is one of the good things about this game. You definitely have different dialogues, or multiple chances of getting different dialogues, but regardless, at the end of the day, their characters are typically the same, and that was how it was in the PS1 version. Like, regardless of what you chose, their personality always stayed true to what the base core foundation of the personality was. What I noticed here in the Reborn version is their personalities will definitely shift towards whatever decisions you choose to make. So answering questions in these decisions that will branch off to different linear paths will definitely have a consequence in terms of game events, character appearances, battles, and personalities, which is now new. The aforementioned ones were always prevalent, always present in the older versions, but having the characters actually act different was something more new. I mean, they did act different, but not to the sense where, like, oh, I can't tell if that's the same person or not. So it was definitely an interesting change to see here. One of the few things I did in this battle, I mean, this is a pretty fairly easy battle, so it's not really anything I would want to go over, but a few things I do want to mention is there was a few times whenever Vice went into the fray by himself, and you see right there, he got pincered multiple times. There was a point in time where I got really worried that he was going to die, and I had to make a choice between either healing him or doing damage on the lowest health enemy. So that's like a really common strategy. If you want to suppress the pressure, you can either delete the pressure or out heal the pressure, right? So in this case, I was left with a choice of either do I kill this person or do I heal the HP sponge per se, right? And at this point right here, I really thought he was going to lose all his HP and teleport out, so I was a bit worried about that, because that would be the second time in the playthrough that he actually done that, and that's never happened to me before. Typically he'll start TPing out later in the game, but never this early, so it was just a bit surprising to see him do that. I made Denim a knight as soon as I could, and this is pretty much as soon as you can make him after the second battle in Amorca Castle. Once you start getting your troop funds and all the party members join you, you can pretty much change Denim to a knight then and there, and that's exactly what I did. One of the things I didn't really ever do before, this is probably new, is actually give Denim a crossbow and a shield. Typically I just run with a two-handed weapon, 2 swords, or just a sword and a shield. But this is one of the times I actually chose a crossbow, and I included another knight as 2 frontliners, and I gave her a crossbow as well. And that, in this case, well, in this particular fight, it worked out very well. So having one-handed crossbows and shield early game or early chapter 1 works really well. As you see, they do really decent damage. But as you get more equipment and more weapons, they tend to scale off, and they don't really penetrate the armor later in the game. And it's not like a linear thing, right? So it ebbs and flows. For example, the beginning few chapters of 1, you maybe have one-handed crossbows, one-handed bows, and they do pretty well until you get like mid chapter 1, late chapter 1, when you start getting newer bows or two-handed bows. That's when they start dropping off, is whenever you get the newer armors, the newer weapons. That's when you start seeing like a big difference in the numbers. And then when you hit chapter 2, I say, or whenever you get the tier 2 weapons, and they start off with one hand, and then at that point you can start picking it back up again. Okay, this is decent. And after the first few chapters or the first few battles, they start dropping off again once you start getting the tier 2 two-handed bows, and you can see how it just ebbs and flows like that, right? So when you hit the end game, hopefully there is a... Actually, no, I noticed that when you hit end game, there's really no one-handed bow. But, no one-handed crossbow. But there's plenty of one-handed bows. So having a knight isn't really feasible end game, except for having like a really tanky sword guy with a shield using phalanx. But there's other classes you can use for a heavy frontliner end game. So I don't really see knights lasting that long. I just want Denim to be a knight because of their strength and bit growth on a knight is decent. And later down the line you can actually decide whether you'd make him a Terra Knight or not. A Rune Fencer is also another good choice. I've heard stories of people making him clerics. I actually considered doing that myself. I really never considered it until they mentioned it, but it definitely is a good idea because of how these stats work in this game. But until we actually know more, I just decided not to mess with something I didn't know and just keep him the way he is as a knight, because I did really work hard in min-maxing his stats towards Vit and Strength, and I got at the point where it was probably one of the highest stats I've had so far. So I don't want to mess that up, so I just kept him a knight and called it a day. In this particular fight here, again, like I said, you don't really miss much. There were times when I had to choose between either hitting the character or healing Vice, and there was a time, I think it was with the Valkyrie, maybe a few steps back, so whenever I could not hit the guy in front of me, so I just instead healed with Vice. I don't know if that was a thing in the SNES version of where you can hit someone who's like right across from you with a bow. But right now, I don't know if I think it's a PSP or a Reborn thing, wherever the first few tiles in front of you is unattackable. And I don't know if that was there in the PS1 version. I just don't really remember that being an issue, but that was definitely an issue here. And if you get too close to your archers or crossbow users, they can't attack you point blank. They have to step back and hit you. I think that's just to balance out archers, because I know back in the old days archers were broken. Like they were so broken. And even now they're still broken. It's just how the armor pen works. And right now we don't really know the exact numbers, but I believe it's just a correlation of its Vit and Strength. But I just don't know. Like I know it goes off your defense and well, again, I don't even know, so who knows? But once we figure that out, we will see, and then we'll be able to know exactly how the numbers are calculated. But there are times whenever you see a archer doing 1 damage, and other times when you can see it do 1,000. So it's really wishy-washy. A good rule of thumb is to keep it attack as high as possible. Its strength and dexterity. Dexterity, it scales to bows really well. But we believe that like strength is one of the another factors that go really well in terms of the pen requirement. So as long as you have a high attack, you should be able to penetrate the armor. That's just like basic 101 is how I understood it. So this is also another reason why having like a one-handed crossbow and a one-handed bow later on the game isn't really feasible. There's only certain points of time where that is actually okay. And that's whenever it's just the strongest one-handed bow, the strongest one-handed crossbow. Do you see? The moment when you start getting your tier 2 upgrades or your two-handed upgrades where your bows are stronger, those are the point in times when you start having better armor, and it just drops off after that. So you can, this goes back to my points of ebbing and flowing. But what I did notice is bows kind of keep that ebb and flow, and crossbows, they don't ebb and flow anymore. They just go straight linear to the point where it's nothing but two-handed crossbows. So that's a bit unfortunate. Here, I had a point wherever I was nearly killing the boss. I really liked having 2 tanks with crossbows because this made the fight a lot faster. Almost everybody was ranged, so I had an enchantress that could hit from afar. I had a Valkyrie who can hit from afar because the Valkyrie had a crossbow as well. I had an archer who can hit from afar. Canopus can probably hit from afar, and he had a melee, a melee weapon. He was a VAR-10 at the time. In this particular one, I fought him, and I could have finished him with my, I believe, Beatrix. Could have finished him, but instead I chose Beatrix to go right behind him and hit him with a shield that barely killed him. But luckily enough, Canopus had his turn next and finished him off with his bow. And that's all she wrote. Done and dusted. But I feel if I pushed Beatrix back and just hit him with the crossbow, he would have died. But again, that's, I would say, hindsight. Speaking of hindsight, I think it would have been best to use some of my charms to level up Vice to level 4 or 5, because I think at this particular one he was level 3 and he was getting targeted a lot. And what we've noticed was that AIs typically target the weakest character in terms of either if they have the lowest defense or the lowest HP. I'm not sure about the latter, but I'm pretty sure about the former, that they pretty much target the weakest person in your team, and then they focus fire that. And you can see that happening in the first episode of my Let's Play as well, whenever we had Denim's stats all jacked up and he totally ignored us, and they totally ignored us. As you see there, we recruited Denim, not Denim, but Canopus. I know I missed that mark, I was talking, it happens, I'm sorry. But we recruited Canopus and we made sure to go to the shop and buy him a few things. But before I did that, I quickly checked the warn report again. There was nothing new, so I exited out of that. I moved Canopus over here to a higher tier in the army right next to me. As you know, we try to make whoever we don't want behind Denim, and not Denim, but Quechua and Vice. So whoever's behind them, they're kind of like second string or backup that will eventually never get used. They have no armor, no nothing, and that's pretty much how we save money. I went into the shop and bought some archer, license points, and I made him an archer. And at this point, the moment I changed him, I instantly regretted it because I saw the movement speed reduction and the stat reduction, and the VAR-10s over had like superior stats. But we didn't have any of those items for VAR-10s. I totally forgot what they're called, like chip icons? Cards? What are they called? Class marks? There we go. It took me forever. We didn't have any class marks for VAR-10, so that was unfortunately no going back. So here we have Archer VAR-10, or Archer Canopus. Gave him some gear in terms of crossbows, and not crossbows, a short bow, and I gave him a little sticker for parry. After that, I started changing out his skills. I think I gave him a little sticker. Yeah, there we go. We gave him parry, short bow. And then we're going to go over here and change his skills to the appropriate skills. Made sure it was dagger, crossbow, and there was nothing else to put, so I put charm. As for items, it was very generic. We had 1 revival item and 1 heal item. In this case, typically I would run with 2 heal items and a exorcism or a buff or debuff item, such as a strength and magic defense up, or an attack or magic attack up. That's typically what we ran, but in this particular sense I gave him dodge and a Ariana plume, which will increase his attack. And later down the line, dodge, I didn't really see it do anything, so I just dropped it later on and replaced it with either a crystallized flame or I believe it was the fizz up item. I'm not entirely sure what it's called, but I used that. And once we're done with that, we pretty much just save the game. I mean, that's pretty much the end of it here. We save the game and then we go back to Almarca Castle to train. And that's pretty much how we end our day. So that's how we're going to be doing things here. Is we're going to go to a battle, we're going to do some housekeeping, read the warn reports. We'll do the warn reports first, do housekeeping, then do training, and then end it from there. Well, before we do training, we'll save, obviously. But that is going to be it for today, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content, and leave a comment on what things you think I said wrong, or things maybe some tips and advice, you can leave the commenters or the viewers as well. Any helpful advice, I would love to see them. Let me know what your thoughts are, what builds you did. I'm interested in hearing what you guys did as well. And also be sure to check that bell notification icon to get updates on my videos. I will be posting this weekly. I do live streams every weekend as well. It's 6 p.m. Central Standard Time from Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So be sure to check me out there if you want to see me. Aside from that, I'll see you all in the next one.